Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations on New Earth Leadership. What does it mean? How do we apply it? We talk a lot about raising consciousness and the spiritual journey, awakening, but what are we really moving towards? How can we be better leaders in our lives? How does leadership change as we evolve? And I think this is something that we all start to resonate with the further along that we go on our awakening journey. And so as we start these conversations, it is my great honor and just such excitement to present a very good friend and a absolutely incredible spiritual leadership author, someone who I connected with about 6 years ago now, right, Brian? This is Brian Cunningham. And his book, Awakening or the Leadership Revolution, because evolution takes too long, was actually a monumental piece in my own, as I was going through my own spiritual awakening and coming into all different kinds of information internally, trying to make sense of this landscape. And your book offered so much structure and really helped me to give a little bit of that conscious mind, conscious leadership energy to see awakening in a different way. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very grateful for the works that you've done. Brian has written many books now, and that includes, these links will be in the descriptions, by the way. Please do check out The Leadership Revolution, because evolution takes too long. Brian has also wrote Our Awareness Quotient, the missing link to extraordinary leadership in life, and Leadership, the Universal Principles. So in this conversation, we are going to talk a little bit about Brian's work and where that work has come from. And then we're going to dive into the practical side of things and really take a look at his framework from his first book and how you can use it to help you as a leader, whether that is in your own life, on your own spiritual journey, or in your organizational leadership and how it changes organizations and the businesses and what we create in this world. So with all of that said, I hope that you'll join us in this conversation and leave your comments below. And Brian, if you would like to introduce yourself, give people a little background.
Can do, Carly. First of all, thanks so much. I've just treasured our relationship and our conversations over the years. They've meant so much to me and helped me to continue to learn and grow and stay inspired about life. So thank you for that. And just as a brief introduction, I think I'm pretty much just like everybody else, you and everybody else out there, right? I grew up confused about life, but with some kind of understanding that there's something more here. There's something more going on than what I was seeing, what was being presented to me, what I was feeling inside. And that started a journey at a very young age of just looking at life and thinking about things, and later on reading and studying. And at some point when I got into the workplace and started to work, it seemed pretty obvious to me that these principles were not separate from work. There wasn't this work life and then this spiritual life, and you do this over here and this over here. Although that's the way it was being presented, I was always looking for that integration element, so there wasn't, this separation. And so that's been the journey: reading, studying, practicing. And as I grew, as a person and in various roles in the workplace and eventually the leadership roles, it was just part of the natural evolution. So that's where it all comes from. And obviously, we're still on that same journey.
I'm going to jump us right into another big question before we get into the framework, which is, we're talking on this channel. I talk a lot about New Earth leadership. And I think we're all kind of finding our way to, it's this thing that we can feel, but maybe each of us has a unique relationship with what it represents. And so my question to you is, what does it mean to you, the idea of New Earth?
What a great question, Carly. So many images come up, when you state that question. On one hand, it's a new earth in every moment of every day. It's always new earth. It's constantly evolving. And, we can see historical elements and present elements and potential future elements. But at the same time, we can also get a feel for the momentum of things, like where are certain things going, whether it's, workplace or personal issues or politics or culture or society or, anything, science. We can see these momentums that are impacting us. And so to me, when I think about that concept, the new earth as applied to leadership is really connecting with the momentum of things and aligning that with our potential as a human being and a leader, right? There is no separation. We talked about spirituality and what's non-spirituality, if there is such a thing, right? It's all connected. So when I think about that concept of new earth, it is about the momentum of things. At the same time, what are the potential of things and how to engage with this evolution or this emergence of new earth and kind of co-create it. I mean, it's going to go where it's going to go unless we step into our responsibility as a human being, which is to engage with the process, co-create along with it. I think I've seen you say before, we're doing it already anyway, in some shape or form, consciously or unconsciously. So the question is, how do we do this? How do we engage with it? Not be moved into, apathy or fear or any of these things. How do we directly engage with it, this emergence of the new earth in our own way, in a way that feels good and right with us, that helps us in our growth, helps us in our ability to serve others. So new earth to me is this image of momentum, image of possibility. Ultimately, though, how do we engage with it?
Absolutely.
Create along with it.
Beautiful. I love that. I just visualize as you're saying it too, the surfing of waves, and it's kind of like for so long we're fighting the waves. We're scared of the waves. We're falling off the waves.
Yeah.
We're resisting the waves. And the way that you just described that momentum was so beautiful, because I see it as finally, it's like the awakening to the wave and being able to, surf and move more gracefully with it, which I love.
Yeah, it's a wonderful image.
Yeah, it really is. So you've spoken to it a little bit, but it's such an important point. I almost want to hit a little harder too, and a little more directly. That spirituality can be somehow separated from the rest of life. And there is an impulse sometimes, not sometimes, very often, as we learn detachment, to pull away from everything that is within the material creation, and kind of isolate and just be, pull away completely from society. And I would love to just hear a little bit of your perspective on that. What works, what maybe is missing in that picture.
Got it. Thank you for that one. Yeah, when we first come across that concept of detachment, I think most, myself, of course, you feel, oh yeah, I have to go up into a cave and meditate for 20 years and create some sense of solitude while I'm doing this spiritual thing. I think it's a sort of a natural reaction to it and expression. And that I think adds to this concept of separation of spirituality from life. And it's particularly explicit in the workplace, right? You can't talk about these kind of things. Spirituality, love, in the workplace, many, maybe even most workplaces, it doesn't go too well. These are charged words and they can trigger people in certain ways. And there's so many different meanings you could ascribe to them. So, as I've wrestled with those or experienced them, at first when I was talking about detachment, I wanted to wall myself up. I remember feeling that pull and keeping it a secret. and that's just part of how society views these things, as this kind of strange thing. But the more you play with it, I think the more naturally there's a desire to integrate it, especially in modern life where we can't really, go up to the cave for 20 years. We're embedded in life. And at some point, it doesn't work for us anymore to keep these things separate. You cannot separate them. However, with an awareness of others' reactions to these kind of things, there are ways that we can integrate this that I think maybe work better, especially in the workplace. You've probably seen it. I've most certainly seen examples where people that came in overly, kind of overt about different versions of spirituality in the workplace, it can turn people off, and it can, be misinterpreted, and it can take away from what really the focus is of our mission together. But it doesn't have to. And so over time, through certain experiences, seeing this and seeing the negative reaction to it, one day it sort of became obvious that we don't need to really talk about it in a way that is off-putting to others. We actually don't need to talk about it at all, right? Ultimately, as we read and study, right, most traditions and most people who really get it will tell us that it's in our acts. It's what we do. It's not what we say. It's not how we look. Like, look at me. I'm meditating, or I'm levitating, or whatever I'm doing. It's really just our daily works, how we interact with everybody each and every day who's in front of us, especially during a challenge. So the concept of this separation, spirituality from regular life, is common. And I've, of course, experienced it and played with it. But over time, fortunately, from whatever I was reading and getting reflected back to me from various mentors that I've come across, it became clear there is no separation. It's all connected. And there's a way to do this in any sort of walk of life, with whether it's, in your family life or work life, or, in various hobbies or groups you're involved in. We don't have to come across, preachy or look at me, I'm enlightened. We just do it. And that's been my approach, definitely in the workplace. As I become more grounded in really, my being and doing as a leader. No, you just be it and do it. And it speaks for itself. And people will then take it in on whatever level that they can experience it.
Absolutely. That true embodiment that I think we are collectively reaching a place where there are more and more people that are understanding this idea and really owning this concept of embodiment, leading by simply just being, and that you are able to do that in any situation. That your energy is just what is transmitting, and
Yes.
And you can bring those principles into this world. Now, some of the challenges, though, along the way, obviously our workplace doesn't hold a lot of these values. And, as we've had conversations in the past, also like, business from love or creating from love, when we are within organizations and structures that are not founded upon that, we can't separate, right? So there is a spiritual foundation to what exists currently, even if it doesn't recognize itself as so, or doesn't understand what its spiritual system is. And so any stories or suggestions on just the nature of how challenging it can be in certain work environments when the foundation of what's built is so misaligned from some of these principles?
Yeah, we can definitely jump into that one. And it's important for us to understand. I mean, it's hard for us not to understand this, but sometimes we pretend we don't, that human expression exists along a continuum, right? There's all kinds of expressions of religion, spirituality, culture, individual preferences. It's everywhere. And although we are the same, right, from a spiritual standpoint, from an energetic standpoint, biological standpoint, right, we are way more similar than different. There is all of these presentations, all of these expressions of our understanding of life that exist all around us. So we should not be surprised that in any environment, workplace environment, family, friend group, wherever, that there's going to be this variability of understanding and expression of what we think and what we believe about life. And so we see that, of course, in the workplace and workplace structures and the way industries are set up. And so it starts with just this understanding of the continuum itself. If we do not understand this is why I think this work is important, to model this out. When we don't understand it, we somehow default to this belief that, well, wait a minute, well, why isn't it as I see it? And it creates a dissonance. There's this resistance, this friction to what we're experiencing, feeling, believing, and what's being expressed by the environment. And so when we understand the environment as an expression of the full continuum of awareness, just like we have been on a journey since we came into this world, right? And have been learning and growing and will continue to learn and grow. When we can see it from that perspective, it's obvious. It is just a collection of the predominant, levels of awareness of those who sort of built it or in control of it at this time. And that could be, sort of down this end of the continuum, more towards that authoritarian expression of leadership or how we move through life, or all the way up to these, much higher levels of unified expression, experience of oneness. There are organizations of that nature. And in all these organizations are various levels of understanding within it. So even though you may be in an organization, an industry where predominant level of understanding is more authoritarian in nature, right? Control-based, patriarchal, all these things. Even within that, there are endless opportunities to infuse it with a different perspective, a different expression, a different experience for those in our more immediate circle, right? Our mission isn't to, well, maybe for some it is. Mine isn't to change the world, to fix or change anything. It's just to, wherever I'm at, whatever environment I'm in, how do I engage with it? How do I infuse it, co-create with it based on my ongoing, continual becoming? So, yeah, there is these structures that exist and that have evolved so slowly, almost set in stone. But even those provide us with opportunities to serve and be who we are and co-create very creatively. Once we understand it and we stop butting our head up against it, or, I need to fix this, I need to change it, I need to tell everybody how they're wrong, of course, which also means how right I am, which is another sort of ego trap, as opposed to, here I am, let's step in, let's do this well, let's serve each other well.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. I have one more question here.
Sure.
Before we dive in, because I'm sure for a lot of people, then it's, what I love that you're setting up is, this idea again of non-resistance, and so much of the embodied consciousness is just accepting this continuum, accepting all of it, just that radical acceptance that allows us then to just work within our own field, our own connection, and to start getting better at the co-creation process. So I love that, and I'm just highlighting it again. Now, we are talking in your book, though, and in the work that you do, there is an evolution to it, right? That there is how should we call it?
There's a natural developmental progression to it.
Okay. A natural developmental progression, meaning though that we have less mastery and we have more mastery, right? That level of
Yes.
discernment.
Mastery is a continuum also. It's all a continuum. It's all developmental. So yes.
Great. So when people are looking at developing their leadership, right? So it's okay, I'm accepting everything. And I am now just doing what I can. I'm embodying my own consciousness, but I'm understanding leadership in a developmental one. What is the outcome for ourselves as leaders as we work on this developmental progression? And what sorts of outcomes are we participating or co-creating, working more consciously within organizations when a framework and this evolutionary process is understood?
Great question. So I'll make just a little book point. The most recent book that I've written, Leadership, the Universal Principles, is actually the integration of the first one, Leadership Revolution, and the book on our awareness quotient. Those are really the two key elements. And so book 3 is those two integrated in a functional way. So just for kind of a book comment.
Great. Good for me to know
But
too.
your question, so let's talk about the universal principles, of which I focus on 2. And the first universal principle is really obvious. It all starts and ends with our awareness, which is really the foundation for the spiritual journey and the journey of life. I mean, very practically, it all starts and ends with our awareness. It is our degree of awareness that allows us to perceive the subtle and gross stimuli in any situation. And our various kind of belief systems, our experiences, our karma in life can have an impact on our awareness. As it contracts, right? We have more limited awareness, more limited perception of the choices that are available to us in a given situation. In fact, when it's most contracted, we usually only have 3 choices in any given situation. Well known, they are either fight, flight, or freeze, right? This is like kind of almost like lizard brain kind of thing when our awareness is contracted. Yet as our awareness expands through our own personal work, right? Spiritual understandings, work, meditation, whatever it is you're drawn to, various experiences in life, even trauma can really expand awareness. As we know, birth of a child, death of a loved one, right? Trauma expands awareness also. So the whole spiritual journey is a journey of our growth in awareness, expansion of awareness. And since it cannot be separate from who we are and why we're here, it is also the foundation for our growth as a leader. So as we embrace this concept of awareness, right, and understand it from a functional standpoint, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about, we'll model that a little bit instead of just talking about it, because you can read about awareness. I was studying it, meditating on it for many, many, many years till this sort of functional model emerged to me. It's been very helpful in then applying it to things like leadership. And so the first universal principle, it all starts and ends with awareness, period.
Great.
And when we apply that, the concept of our awareness quotient to anything, and in this case, leadership, what we see, what we naturally see is this developmental progression, right? The second universal principle states all life unfolds along a natural developmental progression. All of it, right? Acorns turn into oak trees, little tadpoles grow into frogs, right? All this stuff. Humans, there's a whole developmental sequence for human development and growth. Everything, all sports, our education is built around a developmental progression. All sports, all hobbies, music, art, right? Everything except leadership. There's this sort of dividing line artificially established for this, here's regular life and here's the workplace, and leadership is different. It's all different. It's not. It's exactly the same. Yet there is very little understanding of how we bring this application of our awareness applied to leadership to understand the developmental progression of it, right? If you were studying an instrument or going to school, you would never give a kindergarten student PhD level work. You would never say to somebody who's studying violin first week, here's a concerto, I want you to play this. You would never do it. It doesn't work. Coaches, teachers, musicians, artists understand, we all understand how to meet someone where they're at and move them along, support them, serve them developmentally. There's a natural progression, except leadership, right? We throw people in, you did good at your role, here's your leadership job, good luck. Don't break anything, that kind of thing. So it became important to me since, a majority of my life was in this growing expansion of role responsibility in the workplace to really understand what the developmental progression of leadership was, what it looked like, what the states and stages are, how to move along it, and really importantly, how to support others in moving along, how to meet them where they are and help them to move in real time. That was the key. In the workplace, it needs to work right now. So that's kind of this whole movement around these frameworks to understand these two universal principles, how to apply them to anything. Once you're clear about functional use of awareness, our awareness quotient, you can apply it to anything. Back to your earlier statement, we are already doing it to some degree, but the more awareness, the more precise our understanding of the levers of our awareness is, our awareness quotient, the more we can bring to any situation, to any relationship, any conversation, any interaction. Now, talk about new earth emergence. Now we're fully participating, fully co-creating, right, in the present moment. When the emerging reality is in its most formable, when the emerging reality is in its most formable stages, like wet clay,
Yes.
right? Once, you can start to mold it and co-create with it. But if you wait too long, it hardens like stone and you cannot mold that. It's very difficult. And every interaction, every emerging situation is like that. And
I love that, Brian. Sorry.
The more present we are, we can see it right now that we are participating in it. We have the wet clay in our hands right now, and we're aware of it. That's really the active side of presence and this expansion of awareness. It brings us closer and closer and closer in real time to the emergence of reality as the conversation is coming up, as emotion is rising, as fear is rising, right, in ourselves and in others. And the closer to the emergence of this that we are able to be present to, the better, the more co-creative we can be with the situation and move with it and sort of guide it into a more productive way, right? Which is the principle of Aikido that maybe we'll talk about later, right? If you wait too long, the situation has just taken over. So
yes.
That's what I'll say is an introduction to perhaps where we're going next. It is really these two universal principles, two of them, and they're based in awareness. This is the whole spiritual, inseparable, non-negotiable element of our whole being and doing in the world. And when we understand it from this perspective, we can even take away maybe some of the elements of the word spirituality or religion that have been triggering to us and others. Here we can now make it safe for ourselves to explore or others when we understand really the foundations of it, the underpinnings of spirituality or meditation exist in this functional understanding of awareness itself.
Yes. Oh, so beautiful. That clay, you wait too long and it hardens and you can't move it in the same way. You can't co-create in the same way. It's already stagnant. And that's
This,
just so beautiful, so
this,
true.
the same thing happens to our hearts and the hearts of others. In some of the challenges that we experience, our hearts, right, get harder and closed off. So the earlier we can step into that more creatively, with more ease and grace, we're able to start to, co-create in those situations much more effectively, much more in alignment with who we really are, who we're becoming.
Love it. Beautiful.
Even in the workplace,
Yes.
right, even in the messiness of life. Doesn't have to be in an ashram on the weekend or no, today, here and now, Carly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, when we're training, speaking of training for different things, like, whether it's obviously my background being in acting, you're in the rehearsal room and you're practicing so that you are there in performance. The idea is that it's not like, oh, I'm going to get this perfect circumstance for my meditation, my perfect circumstance for practicing presence. But through the chaos of this continuum of life, of all of the different, all different parts, all different aspects of all different fractals of self and different levels of awareness, and being able to work with, to surf, to co-create, to mold that clay, and so that is just, I think that's the most spectacular way to describe the outcome, so to speak, of why we, especially as individuals, engage in this sort of work, where we can be, why it is appealing and necessary that we start to understand it developmentally.
Yes, and to add to that, where this takes us, when we understand these things very purposefully, intentionally, we can chart our own path, our own unique path of leadership mastery, to bring in the mastery concept, our own unique path based on our specific circumstances, the needs of our teams, our people, our family, our organization, whatever it is. Mastery expresses itself, many different ways along that continuum, but specific to our environment, specific to your needs or my needs or the needs of who we're serving at the time. That's where it takes us.
Absolutely. And just to touch real quick, because then I do want to go into our practical steps here. But from an organizational perspective, so I've gone through from individuals practicing, as a leader within an organization, but from an organizational perspective, that change, that being able to mold in the clay, or to mold early to catch as we're going through, especially now as we're experiencing what would be spiritually a collapse of sorts, when things have to be realigned, when there's shadow purge and disruption across the board, and things are very chaotic. So just a moment to, speak to how that, how it's a benefit to any organization that we have. Any kind of project individually that we're working, massive organizations, that there is no other choice at this moment in time but to learn how to engage and to awaken leadership, this awareness, to expand the awareness and awaken leadership for more people within these organizations in order to be able to surf, to be able to.
Yeah, you'll either get gobbled up from it, pulled into it in some way, and it goes where it goes, or you can take the road less traveled, or a more graceful, elegant approach to dealing with these same challenges. Right? I don't have the power to fix or change any of this. That's it's complex, it's chaotic. All I think I can do, or we can do, is step into it in a way that adds more light to it, more grace to it, more love to it, more connection to it, right? You mentioned earlier, through radical acceptance of it. This radical acceptance expands our awareness. Resistance, right, contracts it. So this radical acceptance is actually a requirement to the growth process, this level of surrender. Surrender doesn't mean give up. It just means give up on what you think you know about how things you think should be, kind of thing. Surrender all that. Just serve. Just love, grow, serve, connect. Do your best. Fall down, get up.
Beautiful. All right. Well, I think that is the perfect introduction to now. What is this framework? If you can just walk us through. I'm just getting started. I'm hearing about this, evolutionary, perspective on leadership, or developmental perspective on leadership, as it's really integrating awareness and our spiritual awareness. So where do I get started? What is that? Can you give me an overview as to what that looks like?
Sure. As I said earlier, it's really detailed in my latest book, Integrating Awareness and the Developmental Progression. But if you can pull up the slides, and we can just rip through a couple slides and people can see it.
Great.
All right. Here comes the first one, right? The 2 universal principles we talked about. It all starts, ends with awareness, our AQ, right? Our AQ as the foundation for our IQ, our EQ, and our intuition. It is our awareness that informs all of these things. That's the foundational element. And the second one is, of course, all life unfolds along a natural developmental progression. All of it. All right. So we're starting there. We're going to look at this concept of awareness first, right? And so awareness, right? A functional definition. It's really simply the perceptual quality of the field of consciousness. People tangle these words up. Consciousness, awareness, conscious awareness. You see them put together. Consciousness we can look at, though, as the field out of which all things emerge, are sustained, and eventually disintegrate back into the field. It's all consciousness. And awareness is the perceptual aspect of it. If consciousness is the field, then our awareness is our perception of the field. It's not separate from it. It's a quality of it. So functionally, we really can then understand, okay, if awareness is our perception, and perception is really foundational to our experience, how do we grow perception, right? And this is through this concept of our awareness quotient. And our awareness quotient, just like IQ or EQ or intuition, it really represents the depth, the clarity of our awareness within the 4 domains of our experience in life. As we mentioned earlier, we could term our awareness quotient, this is the field of applied awareness, how it works. And so if we look at this next slide, we see this little graphic on the right made with my sub-mediocre PowerPoint skills right there on presentation. And so, but we can see these 4 domains, our internal environment, right? All of our thoughts, feelings, beliefs, our emotions, the awareness out of which all this kind of emerges. So our internal environment is deep. And you talk a lot about inner authority and outer authority, right? The next domain is our external environment, which, is all the other people that appear to be separate from us, our institutions, politics, education, culture, our the different meanings we apply to all this, the environment, all of our technology, right? This external environment, all of the social constructs that drive a lot of what we were talking about earlier, all exist in the external environment. So these first 2 domains, we need to really, get some depth of understanding of really who we are. We really also need to understand what is going on out here in this environment. And many people are doing that work. But I would say at this point that as deep as our understanding is in these domains, it's not enough. We can have very deep understanding of who we are, right? Sit in the cave for 20 years, very clear about who we are, why we're here. We could spend, a lot of time focused on the outer world or in the workplace and have really strong, institutional knowledge about things. And that's great. We may even sort of have a little bit of awareness or even a lot of both of these domains. But that does not automatically imbue us with the ability to co-create and move forward in life, especially move forward with diverse groups. This is where the third domain comes into play, the integration of internal and external. Once we have sort of grounded ourselves, immersed ourselves in this domain, now we're in a position to dance with the world and co-create and improvise, right? We've talked about acting, improvisational acting, this high-level art, the yes and of life, not but, not resistance, yes and. How do we move forward? How do we reach out, connect with, and dance with the world? This is the integration element. And the fourth domain is the deeper purpose of life itself. This is our growing, deepening understanding of the foundations of who we are and why we're here. This is the wisdom that infuses our being and doing. And interestingly, it can be viewed through the lens of religion or spirituality or culture or indigenous culture, wisdom and cultures, or science or philosophy. The deeper purpose of life itself does not care what we call it or how we connect with it. It's always waiting to come through us. It's part of who we are and why we're here. And our depth of understanding of that element, that domain, further infuses the other domains. And I would just say one more thing about these domains. They are not separate. This is a little diagram, so we could see it. They're all smashed together. They're all whirling inside and growing at different rates. And so we can see this in this very plainly. When we understand it, we can go, okay, yeah, I've been working on myself, but there's these other domains that I have to put some attention on. Otherwise, I will still be kind of stumbling through life, right? It'll be messier than it needs to be. The middle of the diagram, we see the levers of our awareness we referred to earlier, our attention, focus, and intent. Attention being our directional discrimination from a actor standpoint, right? This is the movie camera. It points in a direction, it frames a scene within our awareness. We cannot pay attention to all of the things available within our awareness, this vast field of awareness, right? We have to frame things so that we can manage them. That's the video camera. This is our directional discrimination. And the more refined our attention, the more we can pay attention to the things that help us grow, right? If we pay attention to, garbage or things that harm ourselves and others, life tends to go that way. Our focus, the other element, this is the lens of our video camera, right? It helps us to dial in to see really discrete detail, or we can zoom out and see the larger relationships within the scene of our awareness, right? That has framed something within the field of our, right? Or the scene of our attention that is framing something in our awareness. So it's a lens, but very particularly what it does is it helps us to extract more information from the scene of our attention. It's not just zoom in for fun, zoom out. It extracts subtle information, which helps us to move with life. So very specific function. And our intent, the third element, third lever, is really like the director, right? It's the core impulse, the core catalyst for our being and doing. It's like the director of the movie camera that frames the scene, that adjusts the focus. It's that catalyst that allows us to move through the world. And the deeper our awareness of our intent, the more alignment we move in it, the more it guides our life. So we have these levers, and then once we understand these domains and levers, now we can practice with them. We play with them. We can use this little practice: observe, discern, and apply. Observe with intent-guided attention and focus. Right? This is alignment. This is presence. This is flow. This is how we get there. This automatically puts us in flow. When we do this, automatically the insights emerge to us. Automatically, this is part and parcel of who we are. And then we can discern from them which things we may be able to utilize or apply in the here and now, and then practice and refine. So that's really the kind of the first understanding, is this understanding of our awareness functionally, the levers, how to practice with it. And then we just apply it to whatever we're drawn to in life, including leadership.
I love that. Let me pull these down for one second.
So I wanted to pause there. That's the spiritual element. That's the foundation of our entire experience in life.
Well, absolutely. And what I just love, I'm just going to comment for a second, because I think it's the first time that we actually walked through that particular diagram. And so just observing and capturing again, or recapturing some of the things that I thought were so beautiful. We have the look of, we have the machine, the space of the machine, the landscape, so to speak.
Yeah.
The landscape, how, like, the parts of the machine. In the times of AI, I don't like describing us as a machine, but I hope that everybody knows I'm just using this for easy reference. It's not actually that, it's just a side note. I feel like there's a lot of machine metaphors these days. So, we have the understanding of the machine, the parts, the observation, or not, not observation, attention, focus, and intent. So this is these are the mechanisms, the parts. And then we have how we animate and transform and work the machine, work the awareness through the fields. Does that accurate?
Yes.
Great.
And that comes from our core intent, which is an expression of the depth of our perception of the deeper purpose of life itself. When that is more superficial, we get a more superficial expression. Authoritarian leadership, some version of it, command, control, domination. But as that deepens, all these other options sort of emerge to us. I mean, as our awareness grows, these more limited expressions of leadership they're not possible. They're not possible for us. They're not possible. Our awareness does not allow for it. Our focus, our intention, our awareness itself leads us in a direction to express these more expanded, inclusive, compassionate, supportive, effective, equally effective in a challenging situation. More so, more effective even in many cases. So yes, you're right on. It's it's our understanding functional elements of awareness, understanding the levers, and how to apply them across the 4 domains of our experience. How to really explore these things. That's where our growth comes from.
Amazing. And then from that point, so what you broke down here, that's so helpful for people. We have obviously in so many different spiritual teachings and things, but I've never seen this act like really fully described. So again, I love your work, and I find it to be incredibly, incredibly powerful work. And maybe there are some things that are, that have attempted to describe these things, but I just I find it to be so functional. And so I love that about it. I love that people can just sit down and it's like really engage, and it gives such a clear ability to practice. And so this framework, how you've just kind of laid out and mapped out how awareness functions, essentially, like what awareness is and how it functions. Now, that is something then that individuals can apply to the developmental, the evolutionary framework that comes from your first book, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And I also really love how you describe limited leadership. So as we look at the developmental trajectory, we have limited perception, limited awareness, limited leadership.
It's all connected.
And as we move forward, of course, expanding awareness, which is allowing us to better integrate and lead from a less limited.
More expanded way. Yes, exactly.
Better.
More
Yes.
limited doesn't mean bad or wrong. It's just
No.
limited in its ability to serve people in our growing complexity. That's the only issue with it.
Great.
Limited.
Great. So do we have for today, because we can do a follow-up, do we have a look at the developmental progression?
We do. We most certainly do, yes.
Okay, great. So I would love to just, if you are, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I would love if you could just walk us through an introduction now to the developmental framework and concept, so people can just kind of sit with it, talk about, bring it into awareness a little. Can do.
And some of these terms will be familiar to some, earlier levels of leadership expression, and some maybe new to some that are viewing this. So we'll talk about this as a path, right, of developmental leadership. And let's go back. So first, it all starts, right, and ends with our awareness. We see that, once again, my sub-mediocre PowerPoint skills and graphics. You'll see. You see that little yellow ball of awareness? That's what it all starts. That's what drives the whole thing. But out of this comes, you see this first sort of circle, which represents a level of complexity. Complexity of the environment, complexity of our understanding of life, the complexity of a project, complexity of a relationship, complexity. So there's this first level of complexity. In leadership, we could call it maybe the industrial age, that level of complexity, right? It built our country. It, talk about mechanistic in nature, Carly. Here it is. And out of that complexity was spawned a particular level of leadership that is built to be effective in that level of complexity. And the predominant level of leadership in the industrial age, we could say, was authoritarian leadership. All about command and control, dominating human beings, dominating the environment. Again, this is not a judgment. It's not bad. It built our country and many other countries, right? It's not bad. It's just becoming more and more limited as our complexity continues to increase. So we see this next evolution of complexity. It's also really indicative of a developmental progression. We can see development is not it's not like a ladder, separate stages and states. Each expansion of a developmental progression is built upon and incorporates our previous learning and growth. It is not separate from. So in this next level of complexity, Carly, we could call from the industrial age the information age, which we're all very familiar with. And that also spawned a particular expression of leadership that is effective in that concurrent level of complexity, and that is evidence-based leadership, right? Information ages gives us instant access to data, information, best practices, evidence. And through that, as an evidence-based leadership, we leverage our research, our understanding, the experiences of others. We are all now, as an authoritarian leader, it was our experience that gave us our power, and we guarded our experience from others. But now, with this little thing, right, we are all just as smart as anybody else in the world through this device. It's the evidence. We have access to all this information and data, and it allows us to be more effective in complexity. Moving on, another level of complexity. Even though we have experience, even though we have all this data and information, sometimes that's not enough in complexity. It's not enough just to take somebody else's experience, somebody else's best practice, and shoehorn it into our organization. So this third level of complexity requires a more expanded expression of leadership and understanding. We could characterize as coaching leadership. Coaching leadership takes experience and information and modifies it to our specific needs of our organization, right? Level 1 leadership is based on experience. Level 2 leadership is based on data and information. Level 3 is based on knowledge. Knowledge is the right use of data and information. So here we'll go along now. We have expanding complexity. The next level of leadership, people are familiar with this concept of transcendental leadership. Transcendental leadership is an outgrowth of the previous levels of complexity. Whereas at level 3, we become really strong change agents. We've integrated left and right sides of the brain, logic and creativity. We become change agents. Although change is still not enough in certain levels of complexity. Transformational leadership creates transformation. Change makes things different, while transformation makes us different. This is the experience of connecting mind and heart so that we can connect with the minds and hearts of others. This is what creates a transformational experience. And the next one, so we go from experience to information to knowledge. Transcendental leadership is based in understanding. And the next level of complexity we could call the wisdom age. Out of that which comes servant leadership, a familiar term. Most people, book came out in the 70s, Robert Greenleaf on servant leadership. Everybody I know's read it. Oh yeah, I read that one. Well, where are all the servant leaderships? Most people can describe the characteristics of it, but don't understand it from a developmental standpoint. You just can't read a book on servant leadership if you're grounded in authoritarian leadership and jump there. Oh, it was a great book, but I can't do it. There are too many impediments in between, too many levels in between. So with an understanding of how to move along this progression, now we can help support authoritarian leaders experientially, moving them into evidence-based coaching leadership, transformational. And then the natural outcome of that is this understanding, this desire to serve first, this clarity of vision that allows us to see the larger continuum, the larger arc of cause and effect in life so that we can create more sustainable results, right? This is where it grounds in practical application. And it keeps going, right? Next level of complexity, transcendental leadership. This is where we let go of what we think we know, transcend even what we think we know, so we can be more accepting of reality as it is and work with it from there. The next, expression is this concept of mystic leadership. This is working in the unknown. Very common experience these days in our complexity. I don't know what to do. What do you think we should do? I don't know. Back at level 1, right, we knew everything. Problem, solution. What solution? Our solution. My way or the highway. But as further complexity comes in, it gets a little messy. We can't just do what I used to do 20 years ago. Even the evidence, even AI can't help us in certain situations. We are in the unknown, and we need to get comfortable working in the unknown, collaboratively, searching, brailing our way through, and looking for the pieces of the puzzle to put them together for a solution that'll work for us. Next one. Now we get into next level complexity, awakened leadership, which we talked about earlier. This is our understanding of leadership as a genuine path to awakening as a human being. The path of leadership has within it all of the elements of any other spiritual path or path for growth. Mm. And it puts us in practice every day. Every day in front of us will be challenges, people upset, frustrated, scared, anxious, right? Life is challenging. So the path of leadership puts us in practice all day, every day, 40 plus hours a week. And when we understand it from this perspective, we're able to inform others, rouse this feeling in others about how we can express who we are and why we're here, right? In a project, in real time. Next level, this concept of integrated leadership. We talked about it earlier. This is deep presence, how to work with reality as it's emerging. This is this concept of integrated leadership. Very real. We use, and it can be used all day, every day, multiple situations. And the last one in this model is this concept of unified leadership, this experience of our oneness, our wholeness, and how we bring that into this incredible complexity we're all involved in. And I will make this point. These levels of leadership that are built upon this developmental progression, again, these are not separate. And we have all performed at various levels throughout our life. You, me, everybody else has performed both as an authoritarian leader and a unified leader, depending on the experience at the time. So these aren't secret. They're not just for the chosen few. We have all done these before. We have access to them. The challenge is, where are we grounded? You know, if everything's going easy, we're all unified leaders, integrated, right, awakened. We're all great leaders. But when it's challenging, when somebody's in front of you, confronting you, what is your default mode? That's where we see where you're grounded as a leader. And understanding the developmental progression, applying awareness in the experience of it, using the workplace as the tool for our transformation, right? It's not go meditate and then walk into the workplace and you're a great leader. It doesn't work that way. I've seen many people tell me, oh yeah, I can levitate, I can do all these things. And my question then is like, well, why are you such a jerk then in the workplace? What happened? What happened? Anyway, when we do this using the workplace, the real work, the experiences in the workplace, we automatically integrate and move and expand our awareness and expand our expression of leadership as a result. So again, we've all done this. It's not secret, and it's available to us. It's very helpful when we know the developmental pathway.
Absolutely. So great. And okay, can I poke you with a few questions before we wrap up here?
Yeah.
All right. So I love also as leaders, right, that when things are going great, we're all up top. And I'd say, we know that individually in our lives as well.
Mm-hmm.
The question is not, who are we on a good day, but who are we when things are going downhill? And that is not to be a shameful sort of self-analysis, but just an understanding of, okay, so where are we continuing, every day is an opportunity, and again, to ride that wave with more humility, grace, and mastery. And so if I'm looking at this, how do you recommend to people when we're looking at these different stages? Because, sorry, let me add actually for Brian here right now. So each of these stages does have an objective, right? An objective to work upon and something to release.
Yes.
Correct? Actually, if you can speak just to that part real quickly.
Yes, it's not enough to just have a slick model with my sub-mediocre PowerPoint skills, right? It's just a model. How do we move with it? How do we work with it? So inherent in the model and detailed in the books I've written about and other, sub-mediocre PowerPoint slides is the recognition, the understanding of what it's made up of, where it comes out of, the level of complexity it comes out of, its inherent characteristics, and the attachments, talk about attachments, that hold us in place, like our attachments to the need to control things as our source of power in the world binds us to authoritarian leadership. So I can read the book on servant leadership, but until I move beyond this attachment to control, I'll be, hit or miss with it. And so the understanding that came from understanding the model is how to move beyond it using the tools of the workplace. So inherent in the model is what are the functions of the workplace or in my service as a leader that I need to do, that I need to pay attention to, that I just need to do over and over and over, that will automatically move me beyond that attachment to the need to control and move me into a higher expression of awareness so that I can then naturally start to take on these these more expanded characteristics of evidence-based leadership and start to express and work with them. And by that practice, I start to now ground myself in more expanded expression. And then as more complexity comes in, I need to understand what I need to do, the practice, what specifically I need to do in the workplace. And these are all detailed out that will then create the experience for me to expand awareness, right? We can expand our awareness sitting in a cave or experientially, right? The experience of life grows our awareness. And when we bring them together more purposely, integrate awareness with our experience, now our growth becomes exponential. Now we can move along this developmental pathway with more ease and grace and impact. So yes, within the model is the characteristics of each level, what holds us in place, what attachments hold us in place, and how to naturally move beyond them using the real work. So that's kind of in a nutshell, the practice.
I love it. Such a beautiful phrase that you had there. Yeah. When that awareness meets our experience, and how does consciousness expand? It expands through experience, which can be internal in meditation. You know, that is deep, necessary, mystical experience. But we have to show up in life.
Yeah.
That is the main expansion tool. And I think you've just provided such a great framework for people to do so. So whether it is at work being a more traditional sort of work setting, or for those who may be listening also involved in different community projects, and how to start new things. And, I just wanted to bring to note how often I'll go into a lot of new communities that are spiritual and aware. And there's a lot of awareness, or you could say mystical experience, mystical inner awareness. But the ability to lead, to take that awareness into action, and to understand oneself as a leader in order to co-create is not actually established. And so a lot of these projects fall through. They just, because we didn't learn a lot of the skills that were necessary, maybe at work or in other places. It was kind of like, I'm out of here. I'm going to go start something new. But that lack of skill development or mastery that happened in the leadership kind of follows us into the next, project.
That's that third domain of our AQ, right? We can have mystical experiences, see, lightning bolt through our head, all that. But until we really engage with, practice with, how we dance with the world, it will fall short, and communities of enlightened beings will also struggle. Absolutely.
And that is, I think, for today, where we can go ahead and the wrap. There was a lot of information here, and all of the links to Brian's books and work are below. Please do check it out. You will be glad you did. And before we close, Brian, are there any kind of last words to leaders, to people that are awakening right now, for all the different ways that we might consider that, but awakening and really trying to co-create in life, becoming more conscious and wanting to see a new earth or a better reality for themselves and other people? What is your kind of message or your words on that?
Well, I would just say that I just honor your journeys, all of your journeys. This is not easy work. None of this is easy. And as you mentioned earlier, there's all this information and books and complexity to even the process. And so it can be really challenging to come to a more foundational understanding of how we take these complex spiritual practices or systems practices or cultural understandings and apply them to the realities of 21st century complexity. And so I honor everyone on their journeys, honor how complex it is. I have much gratitude to be in this with you all, and we're doing our best to figure it out. And we're going to, I think, do better and better through our connection with each other. And that's why I appreciate so much what you're doing, Carly, creating these connections, creating these interactions. That's what's going to help us get through this. So much thanks to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I look forward, I hope, if, again, Brian will have it, to have you on for more leadership conversations in the future. I really appreciate your voice, and thank you. So I'll go ahead and close this for today. Thank you, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed. Leave your comments below, and see you soon.